Hello, my friends. A couple nights ago, Amber went live twice. And the first time, she made some pretty serious allegations against Tammy. And then she followed it up with a 3-minute live. And I had been sort of still flabbergasted by the accusations. But once I got away from it, and I saw some comments and saw some emails and stuff, I started realizing I have no idea how I missed the fact that in that 3-minute live, she pretty much just flat out admits that she has been lying about Casey this whole time. So I feel really stupid for just tunnel visioning through the 3-minute live, but we're gonna go over it a little bit more in this video because I don't know how else to take this other than what she said about Casey just wasn't true. And she admitted it without realizing it because, of course, Amber doesn't think for a second before she speaks, before she types. In fact, her not thinking about what she's typing is what got her in this mess to begin with when she made a post on Discord, but we'll get into that in a minute. So if you'd like to like and subscribe, that would literally be hectic. I'm not gonna lie. And just a trigger warning for SA and the R word. So if for some reason you're unfamiliar with the Casey story, I actually have a video that I made a while back that goes into a lot more detail and gives a lot of the context that you'll need for this video. But the very short version of the story is Amber accused her ex, Casey, of R-wording her.
She really thought I was attractive. She really was sexually attracted to me, and she always wanted to have sex. So not only was I being physically abused, but I was pretty much being raped. That is what I consider it. That is what I consider it because I continuously would say no to her.
And it's interesting back then that she said, I was pretty much R-worded. That is what I consider it. Which is a little bit of loosey-goosey language, if you ask me. And we know the famous line.
When I said that they would essay me, when I used the A word, assault, I consider harassment as an assault.
So, what actually happened, we don't know. But it's clear that she's willing to take a scenario and turn it either far worse than it is or just into something that it's not to get her sympathy. So after Amber made those accusations, Casey responded and said, that didn't happen.
She punched me around right here a lot. She would punch me on my arms.
Those were the exact places she hit me. I was the one being abused. And I will say this, I may have laid a hand on her a few times. That was in self-defense. I didn't do it, and I damn well did not rape her. I did not rape her.
So Amber made a video saying, Rain and Petals Eavesdrop, R-A-P-E, I used the wrong word.
R-A-P-E, Rain and Petals Eavesdrop, I used the wrong word. Rain and Petals Eavesdrop, I used the wrong word.
It was sort of her stupid roundabout cockamamie way of admitting that she probably shouldn't have said that word. That's the way we all took it anyway, was she said the R word and she shouldn't have, and she realized it. And at least she got a little bit of credit for that. But then recently, she has been saying that she stands by her story about Casey.
But one thing I will stand by is everything I said about Casey is 100% true.
Remember when I shared my story about Casey, and I still stand by every single thing I said about Casey.
All right, we're going to start with Crystal because I'm not going to say a single good thing about Casey, point blank, pure.
Then, a few nights ago, she was posting in the Discord for one of the LolCow live podcasts. I think it was Tech Talk or whatever. And she posted a thing that said, I got fingered by a dickless man. And people took that to be Casey. And were like, hey, that's messed up. Why would you say that? And started saying that she's transphobic. Well, she can't have that, right? She's got her facade she's got to keep up. And part of her facade is that she is a trans ally. She's chosen that as part of her personality, whether it's true or not. She wants people to think that. So when people start calling her transphobic, she starts crashing out. Now, the good thing for us is that Amber is a child. And as such, when she decides she wants to clear up a rumor, she does it live. And she does not think about what she's saying. And so she went live and she said this.
I want to make something extremely clear to everyone out there. I have been fingered sexually by 4 people in my life. Destiny, Becky, Feline, and Emily. I was never touched in that way by Casey. I want to make that very fucking clear.
I don't know how else to take that other than it never happened. I've never been touched in that way by Casey. Then what happened? Because I understand that there are other ways to experience stuff together. I don't want to mention any because we're talking about Amber and I don't want to picture any of that. But at first she says, I was digitized sexually by 4 people. And she lists the names and she says, Casey never touched me in that way, meaning sexually. That's the only way I can take that. We know Amber is a pathological liar, and I think she spends most of her days, and I think she used to do this more back when she was a little younger, but we know she spends her days doing nothing. So I think she sits around and thinks of stories to tell about contamination OCD and stuff like that recently. But back then, a story about being R-worded was a perfect opportunity to get sympathy and be a victim. So it's story time. And she doesn't think about the effect that story will have on anybody else. She's just excited to tell her audience the story. When that backfired, when Casey actually turned out to be a real person with feelings and could be affected by a story like that, then she backtracked. And then more recently, I think she's just been mad because remember, Beck and Casey did a live stream together where they spilled as much tea as they could think of. They kind of compared war stories, so to speak. And it was about that time that you saw Amber start to say, I stand by what I said about Casey. So I think it's a revenge thing. But notice she has not said what Casey did since back then. She just says, I stand by what I said, which is just kind of interesting. I'm not sure if that means anything, but it could be kind of telling. But once she needs to fix that facade, once people start saying she's transphobic, she comes out here and she doesn't think about what she's saying because she never does. She goes live to do damage control, which clearly is not very smart for her. And she says, he never touched me in that way. And it's like, do you not even listen to yourself speak? And I'm sure she's going to say that he did other things, but I don't know, man. This to me feels like a slip up that she didn't realize she was doing. Now, is there a chance that the Casey story, the original Casey story, is true? I don't know, man. I always try to err on the side of you can never really be 100% sure of anything. But man, if you watch the Victims of an Empath, Casey, and you hear Casey's side of the story, and then you know what happened between Amber and Emily and the way she crashed out over that and came out and just went to the Darvo Olympics to try to spin things to make Emily look like the abuser. We know what Amber's capable of, and we also know she's a pathological liar. We also know that she will twist the narrative to make herself the victim in every single scenario. So, yeah, I'm not surprised that she said this. In a moment of sort of panicked clarity to try and save her reputation as an ally, I'm not surprised that the truth came out. But think about it. This could have been avoided if she took a second to think about what she's typing. Because here's the thing, I have a relatively minuscule following when compared to the greater internet, you know? But even with a small following like mine, anytime I'm watching a video on YouTube and I think of a comment that I want to make, my first thought is, what if somebody recognizes my name? Is this comment something I want them to see? My comments are always pretty harmless, but that's my first thought anyway. But Amber doesn't do that. Amber doesn't realize that people recognize her name on the internet everywhere. They don't recognize her in person everywhere, but they recognize her name everywhere. So she needs to be careful what she says, and especially her, because she gets scrutinized every time she says or does anything, and she should know that by now. So when she posts a thing that says, I got fingered by a dickless man, she needs to think, how will this sound to my subscribers, to my supporters? It doesn't matter what the backstory is, because most of your supporters don't know that backstory. But she's too up her own ass to think for a second, what will people think if I post this? She doesn't care. She doesn't have the bandwidth to think that through. So I just wanted to point this out because I can't believe I missed it the first time, and it is kind of disgusting. So either she's lying now, which, I mean, she could be lying every time she opens her mouth, for all we know at this point. But I would say that going live and spouting off like this is probably far more honest than she was back then when she was telling the story of Casey and the R word, because she is a bad liar. She always has been. She has a lot of tells. When she lies, she gets real breathy. And he, a lot of that. But she's very animated when she's lying. She's moving her head a lot, and she's moving her hands a lot in weird ways. And she has this one tell where she goes like this. She'll say something like, and I don't think so. Or even though I wasn't.
I'm on my period, like, even though I wasn't. And she would literally sit there and beg me. At first it was like cute little begs, like, oh, come on, baby, whatever. But then as time gradually went on, it became, you're gonna fucking touch me whether you like it or not. And I was like, you can't force me.
And she's gotten a little better over the years, but it was so obvious back then. I would say that the second worst part of this video is how smug she is. That look right there, yeah. That's a face, man. That's a face you just wanna, you know. Anyway, so yeah, just tell me what you think. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I saw a lot of comments. I saw a lot of emails. I saw a lot of people on Reddit talking about it. And it seems as though we're all sort of in agreement that this sounded an awful lot like accidentally admitting that she lied about Casey. So anyway, I appreciate you guys so much. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.